My name is Jonathan Clark. I'm 68 years old, and tonight my own son-in-law tried to throw me out of my beach mansion, 2:45 in the morning. That's when it happened. That's when everything I feared came crashing through my front door like a tidal wave I couldn't stop. I was in my study, couldn't sleep, hadn't been able to sleep properly for 3 nights straight. Something in my gut kept telling me that danger was coming, that the walls I'd built around my life were about to come down. I was right. The banging started like thunder, violent, aggressive, the kind of sound that splits the silence of a peaceful night and turns it into a nightmare. Boom, 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 fists pounding against solid oak like they wanted to break through it. My heart jumped into my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. I set down the glass of water I'd been holding, my hands were shaking, I won't lie, and I walked slowly toward the front door. Through the peephole I could see him, Derek, my son-in-law. The man my daughter Sarah married 3 years ago. The man I never trusted, not from day one, not from the moment he shook my hand with that slick smile and those cold eyes that never quite reached warmth. And he wasn't alone. 2 men stood behind him, bigger than him, broader in the shoulders, with faces that looked like they'd seen the inside of more bars than churches. I opened the door. Derek's smirk was the first thing I saw. That arrogant, entitled smirk that made my blood boil even as I kept my face neutral. He looked me up and down like I was nothing, like I was an obstacle he was about to remove from his path. "Old man," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "pack your things. This mansion is mine now." One of his buddies, a thick-necked guy with a shaved head and a tattoo creeping up his neck, stepped forward. He jabbed a finger toward me and growled, "Hurry up. We want this place cleared before sunrise." I stood there in my robe, the ocean breeze from the open door brushing against my face, and I looked at all 3 of them. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just adjusted my robe slowly, picked up the cup of tea I'd left on the side table near the entrance, took a long, deliberate sip, and then I said, calm as the morning tide, "Step inside." They had no idea what I arranged the night before. They had no clue what was waiting for them, and that ignorance. That was about to cost them everything. But before I go any further, I need you to do something for me. Please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there listening to this story, because what I'm about to tell you next, it's going to leave you speechless. Now let me take you back. Let me show you how I got here. How this mansion, this beautiful place by the sea, became the center of the ugliest battle of my life. I bought this mansion 15 years ago. 15 years. It wasn't handed to me. It wasn't inherited. I didn't win it in some lottery or stumble into wealth. I earned it. Every single brick, every polished floorboard, every window that looks out over the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean. I earned it through decades of sacrifice, discipline, and pain. I worked 2 jobs for most of my adult life. I was a civil engineer by day, pulling long hours on construction sites, making sure buildings didn't fall and bridges didn't collapse. By night, I did consulting work, freelance projects, anything I could find to add a little more to the savings account. I didn't take vacations. I didn't buy fancy cars. I didn't waste money on things that didn't matter. I saved, I planned, I dreamed, and the dream was always this: a home by the ocean, a place where I could finally rest. A place where my late wife, Margaret, and I could spend our golden years watching the sunset, listening to the waves, feeling like all the struggle had been worth it. But Margaret never got to see this place. She passed away 2 months before I closed on the property. Cancer. It took her fast, too fast, and it left me hollow. I remember standing in this empty mansion the day I got the keys, walking through rooms that echoed with silence, and I broke down. I fell to my knees in the living room, and I cried like I hadn't cried in years, because she was supposed to be here. We were supposed to grow old here together, but she was gone. So this mansion became more than just a house. It became my memorial to her. It became the only thing I had left that connected me to the life we planned, the future we dreamed about during all those nights when we were too tired to talk, but still held hands across the dinner table. This place is everything to me. It's my past, my present, and the only future I have left. And Derek thought he could just take it. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. God, they were right there in front of me, flashing like warning lights, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to accept that my own daughter could be part of something so cruel. It started about 2 weeks before that night. Small things at first. Sarah came by the house one afternoon, unannounced, which was unusual. He'd been distant for months, ever since she married Derek. Our relationship had cooled, and I blamed myself for that. I'd expressed my concerns about him early on, told her I didn't trust him, and she'd pulled away from me, chose him over her own father. That hurt more than I can put into words, but that afternoon she was suddenly warm again, friendly. She hugged me at the door, asked how I was doing. She said she wanted to spend more time together, and I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe that my daughter was coming back to me, that maybe she'd realized Derek wasn't the man she thought he was. We sat on the back deck overlooking the ocean, drinking iced tea, and she asked me questions. Casual questions. At least they seemed casual at the time. Have you ever thought about what happens to this place when you're gone? Do you have a will set up? Is everything in order? Derek was saying you should really have a trust or something. You know, to protect your assets. I brushed it off. Told her I had everything handled, that she didn't need to worry, but something in her tone felt wrong, rehearsed, like she was reading from a script someone else had written. Then Derek started showing up, not with Sarah alone. He dropped by, always with some excuse, wanted to check in on me, wanted to make sure I was doing okay. But his eyes were always moving, scanning the rooms, lingering on the furniture, the paintings, the expensive fixtures I'd installed over the years. One evening, he sat across from me in the living room and said, "You know, Jonathan, this place is too big for one person. Have you ever thought about downsizing, moving into something more manageable?" I told him I was perfectly fine where I was. He smiled that oily smile and said, "Just thinking about your future, old man. Sarah and I worry about you, old man." He'd started calling me that, not Jonathan, not Dad like he used to pretend, old man like I was already irrelevant, already in the way. And then 3 nights before the break-in, I got a phone call, late, almost midnight. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered it anyway. "Mr. Clark," a man's voice, professional, cold. "This is a courtesy call. I'm an attorney representing your son-in-law, Derek Hamilton. We are in the process of reviewing your property holdings, and we'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss transfer options." My stomach dropped. Transfer options? What the hell are you talking about? Your daughter and son-in-law are interested in acquiring the beach property. We believe there are legal avenues to facilitate this transition smoothly. We'd prefer to handle this amicably. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. We're already moving, already plotting, already treating my home like it was theirs to claim. That's when I knew. That's when the fog lifted and I saw the truth with brutal clarity. They were coming for me, and they weren't going to stop until they had everything. So I made a decision that night. A decision that probably saved my life, or at least saved everything that mattered to me. I didn't sleep. I sat in my study until dawn, making calls, sending emails, pulling together every resource I had. By the time the sun rose, I'd contacted my attorney, Martin Breslow, a man I'd known for 20 years, someone I trusted completely. I told him everything. He didn't waste time. He got to work immediately. By noon the next day, we'd done the following. First, I transferred the deed of the mansion into an irrevocable living trust with me as the sole beneficiary and trustee. That meant Derek and Sarah couldn't touch it, couldn't claim it, couldn't argue that it was part of some family estate they had rights to. The property was locked down, legally bulletproof. Second, I installed security cameras, not just at the front door. I installed it everywhere. Living room, hallways, study, kitchen, even the garage. High definition, motion-activated, cloud-uploaded footage that couldn't be erased or tampered with. Every angle covered, every conversation recorded. Third, I met with a notary and signed a dozen documents, affidavits, statements, property protections, medical clearances proving I was of sound mind and body. I wasn't giving them any opening to claim I was senile or incompetent. I documented everything. And fourth, I hired a private investigator. I needed to know what Derek was really up to, who he was talking to, what his financial situation looked like. If he was planning something, I needed evidence. By the time that second night ended, I was exhausted, but I was ready. I'd built a fortress around myself, invisible but unbreakable. And then, at 2:45 a.m., they came. Let me take you back to that moment, to the exact second when Derek and his 2 thugs stepped through my door, thinking they owned the place. They walked in like conquerors. Derek first, chest puffed out, that smirk plastered across his face. His 2 buddies followed, heavy footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors, their eyes sweeping the space like they were already measuring it for their own furniture. Derek turned to face me, hands in his pockets, casual as could be. "You heard me, Jonathan. Start packing. We're taking over." Sarah signed papers. "This place is ours now. You've got until morning to get out." I stayed calm, took another sip of my tea, let the silence stretch between us, let them feel uncomfortable in it. "Papers." Said quietly. "What papers?" "Transfer of ownership," Derek said, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket and waving it at me. "Sarah's your only heir. She has rights, and she's signing those rights over to me. So this mansion, it's mine now." One of his buddies chuckled. A low, ugly sound. Old man's about to be homeless. I looked at that piece of paper and I felt a surge of anger so hot it nearly burned through my composure. But I didn't let it show. I just smiled. A small, tight smile. You want to know what I did last night, Derek? He frowned. What? Last night, I said, setting my tea down on the table, I transferred this entire property into an irrevocable trust. That means no one, not you, not Sarah, not anyone can touch it, not while I'm alive, not even after I'm gone unless I say so. That paper you're holding, it's worthless. Derek's smirk faltered, just for a second, but I saw it. Bluffing, he said. Am I? I walked over to my desk, pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the coffee table between us. There's the trust document, notarized, filed with the county, legal and binding. You can call your lawyer right now if you want, but you're not taking this house. The two thugs looked at each other. One of them shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. Derek's face was turning red. You think you're smart? Derek hissed, stepping closer to me. You think you can just pull some legal trick and stop us? We'll fight this, we'll take you to court, we'll prove you're incompetent, you'll what? I interrupted, my voice sharp now, the anger finally leaking through. You'll threaten me, you'll try to intimidate an old man in his own home. Go ahead, Derek, keep talking, because every word you say is being recorded. His eyes widened. What? I pointed to the corner of the room. A small camera, barely visible, mounted near the ceiling. Then I pointed to another one, and another. Every room, I said, every angle, high definition, cloud storage. Everything you've said tonight is already saved, every threat, every illegal attempt to force me out of my home. And you know what? I've got a lawyer who's very excited to present all of this to a judge. Derek's face went pale. One of his buddies muttered, man, we should go. But Derek wasn't done. He took a step forward, his fists clenched, and for a moment I thought he might actually swing at me. But then he stopped. He looked around at the cameras, at the folder of legal documents, at me standing there calm and unafraid. This isn't over, he said through gritted teeth. Oh, it's over, I replied. You just don't know it yet. He turned and stormed out, his two friends following close behind. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. And I stood there, alone in my living room, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, and I let out a long, slow breath. I'd won the first battle. But I knew the war was just beginning. The next morning, I called Martin Breslow and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said, Jonathan, you did exactly the right thing. Now we go on the offensive. What do you mean? We file a restraining order. We submit the recordings as evidence of attempted coercion and illegal eviction. We file a police report for trespassing and threats. And we make sure Derek knows that if he comes anywhere near you or this property again, he's going to jail. I felt a weight lift off my chest. For the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't fighting this alone. But then Martin said something that made my blood run cold. Jonathan, there's something you need to know. I did some digging into Derek's background. He's in serious financial trouble, owes money to some very dangerous people. I think he was planning to take your mansion, sell it, and use the money to pay off his debts. This wasn't just greed, this was desperation. Desperation that made him even more dangerous. Over the next few days, the attacks escalated. Not physical, Derek was too smart for that now, but psychological, calculated, vicious. Sarah called me. Her voice was cold, distant, like she was reading from a script. Dad, you need to stop this. You're making things harder for everyone. Derek just wants to help you. You're being paranoid and unreasonable. Sarah, I said, my voice breaking, he tried to throw me out of my house in the middle of the night, with two thugs. How is that helping me? You're exaggerating. You're old, Dad. You're confused. Maybe you need to see a doctor. Maybe you need to be in a facility where people can take care of you. Those words cut deeper than any knife. Own daughter telling me I was crazy, telling me I needed to be locked away. Sarah, I said quietly, I don't know what he's told you, but I'm not confused. I'm not losing my mind, and I'm not giving up my home. She hung up on. The smear campaign started. Derek and Sarah began telling people, friends, neighbors, extended family, that I was suffering from dementia, that I was paranoid, that I was making wild accusations against them because I couldn't handle reality anymore. I started getting calls from concerned relatives. Jonathan, are you okay? Sarah says you've been acting strange. I tried to explain, I tried to tell them the truth, but Derek and Sarah had gotten there first, planted the seeds of doubt, and now every word I said sounded like the ravings of a confused old man. It was brilliant, in a sick way, destroy my credibility before I could even fight back, make me look like the problem. Make themselves look like the concerned, loving family members trying to help. I felt isolated, alone, like the walls were closing in, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Martin filed the restraining order, and it was granted. Derek was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. The police report was filed. The evidence was submitted. And then the private investigator I'd hired came back with a report that changed everything. Derek wasn't just in debt. He was being investigated for fraud. He'd been running a real estate scam, convincing elderly investors to put money into properties that didn't exist, then pocketing the cash. The state attorney general's office was building a case against him. He was desperate because he was about to be arrested. And my mansion, it was his Hail Mary, his last chance to grab something valuable before everything came crashing down. I felt sick. This man had married my daughter, had sat at my dinner table, had called me dad. And the whole time he was a con artist, a predator. I showed the report to Martin. He read it carefully, then looked up at me with grim satisfaction. "This is it, Jonathan. This is what we need. Derek isn't just a threat to you, he's a threat to everyone. We take this to the authorities. We make sure he goes down." The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal filings, depositions, and strategy sessions. Derek tried to fight back, but his desperation was showing. He filed a countersuit claiming I'd defamed him, that I'd damaged his reputation with false accusations. But we had evidence, video recordings of his threats, financial records showing his fraud, testimony from his victims. The walls were closing in on him, and he knew it. Sarah tried one more time to reach out to me. She showed up at my door. Martin advised me not to let her in, but I did anyway. She was my daughter. Despite everything, I still loved her. She looked terrible, thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. She stood in my doorway and said, "Dad, please, drop the charges. Derek made mistakes, but he's trying to fix them. If you do this, you'll destroy him. You'll destroy us." I ooked at her, this woman I'd raised, this person I'd loved more than anything in the world, and I said, "Sarah, he tried to take everything from me. He tried to make me homeless. He manipulated you, lied to you, and used you to get to me. And you let him. You chose him over your own father." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't know, Dad. I swear I didn't know what he was planning." "But you knew something," I said. "You knew he was asking questions about the house. You knew he was pushing me, and you did nothing to stop it." She collapsed into sobs, and part of me wanted to reach out, to hold her, to tell her it was okay. But I couldn't, because it wasn't okay. She'd betrayed me, and forgiveness wasn't something I could just hand out like candy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "So am I said, and I closed the door. The climax came in a courtroom. Derek had been arrested on fraud charges, but he was out on bail, and we were in the middle of a civil hearing regarding the attempted illegal eviction and harassment. I sat on one side with Martin. Derek sat on the other side with a public defender. His fancy lawyer had dropped him once the fraud charges went public. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Harmon, reviewed the evidence. She watched the video recordings of Derek and his thugs threatening me. She read the trust documents. She examined the financial records showing Derek's criminal activity. And then she looked at Derek with a kind of cold contempt that made the entire room go silent. "Mr. Hamilton," she said, "I've seen a lot of despicable behavior in my courtroom, but what you did to this man, your own father-in-law, is beyond the pale. You attempted to coerce an elderly homeowner into surrendering property that was legally his. You brought associates to intimidate him. You launched a smear campaign to destroy his credibility. And on top of all that, you're currently under investigation for defrauding multiple senior citizens out of their life savings." Derek opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "I'm granting a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact with Mr. Clark, directly or indirectly, for the rest of your life. Additionally, I'm awarding Mr. Clark damages for emotional distress and legal fees. And I'm forwarding all of this evidence to the district attorney's office to support the criminal case against you." She slammed her gavel. "We're adjourned." Derek's face went white. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he just sat there, frozen, staring at the table. I walked out of that courtroom with Martin by my side, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But the victory felt hollow. I went home that night to my beautiful mansion by the sea, and I sat on the back deck watching the waves crash against the shore, and I felt empty. I'd won. I'd protected my home. I'd exposed Derek for what he was. I'd saved myself from losing everything, but I'd lost my daughter. Sarah stopped contacting me after the hearing. I heard through family that she and Derek had separated, that she'd moved back to her hometown, that she was trying to rebuild her life. But she didn't reach out to me, didn't apologize, didn't try to make things right, and that hurt more than anything Derek had ever done to me. I sat there in the dark, the ocean breeze cool against my face, and I cried, not just for Sarah, for Margaret, for the future we'd planned that never happened, for the family I thought I'd have in my old age. I'd won the battle, but the cost was almost too much to bear. Time passed, weeks turned into months. Derek's trial came and went. He was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. I felt no joy in that, just a quiet sense of justice. I tried to move on with my life. I started spending more time with my neighbor, a retired teacher named Helen who'd been kind to me throughout the whole ordeal. We'd have coffee on her porch in the mornings, talk about books and movies and the little things that made life bearable. She never asked me about Sarah, never pushed me to talk about the pain. She just listened, and that was exactly what I needed. One morning, about 4 months after the trial, I got a letter in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar. My heart started pounding before I even opened it. It was from Sarah. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten, tear-stained in places. I sat down on my couch and read it slowly, carefully, my hands shaking. "Dad, I don't know if you'll even read this. I don't know if I deserve for you to read this, but I need to try. I need to tell you that I'm sorry. I was so blind, so stupid. I thought Derek loved me. I thought he was trying to help us build a future together. I didn't see what he was really doing until it was too late. And by the time I realized, I'd already hurt you in ways I can never take back. You were right about him from the beginning. You saw through him when I refused to. And instead of listening to you, instead of trusting the man who raised me and loved me my entire life, I chose him. I chose a liar and a manipulator over my own father. I know I can't undo what I did. I know I can't erase the pain I caused you, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm in therapy. I'm working on understanding how I got so lost. And every day I think about you. I think about how much I miss you, how much I wish I could go back and make different choices. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to let me back into your life. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I love you, Dad. I always have. I always will. Sarah. I read that letter 3 times, and then I folded it carefully and set it on the table. Part of me wanted to call her immediately. I wanted to tell her that I forgave her, that I wanted her back in my life, that we could move past this. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, that had almost lost everything because of her choices, wasn't ready. So I didn't call, not that day, not that week, but I kept the letter. Life continued. I found a new rhythm. Helen and I became closer, not romantically, just 2 people who understood what it meant to be alone and were grateful for each other's company. I started volunteering at a local community center, teaching basic financial literacy to seniors. I wanted to make sure no one else fell victim to people like Derek. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. One evening, about 6 months after receiving Sarah's letter, I sat down and wrote her back. I didn't forgive her, not completely, not yet. But I told her I was glad she was getting help. I told her I appreciated her apology. And I told her that maybe someday we could try to rebuild something. The door wasn't fully open, but it was cracked. Just a little. Sitting here now, looking back on everything that happened, I realized something important. I didn't just save my house. I saved my dignity. I saved my self-respect. I refused to be a victim, refused to let people who didn't care about me take what I'd spent a lifetime building. And yeah, it cost me. It cost me my relationship with my daughter, at least for now. It cost me months of sleep and stress and pain, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. And this mansion, this beautiful place by the ocean that I built with my own hands and my own sacrifice, is still mine. Derek thought he could take it. He thought I was just some old man, easy to push around, easy to intimidate. He was wrong, and if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel small. Never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve what you've earned. And never, ever let them take what's yours without a fight, because you're stronger than you think. And sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones who sit back and sip their tea while the storm rages, are the most dangerous of all. So that's my story. That's how my son-in-law tried to throw me out of my beach mansion, and how I made sure he regretted every second of it. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it means the world to know there are people out there who understand. Take care of yourselves, protect what matters, and remember, you're never too old to fight back. My name is Jonathan Clark. I'm 68 years old, and I'm still standing.